Thank you to everybody who's here tonight for this very momentous conversation. I'm incredibly excited to be in conversation with Deepa and Banu today. It would be really lovely if we could start off with a reading so we can all hear a little bit of the book before we begin.
ಒಮ್ಮೆ ಹೆಣ್ಣಾಗು ಪ್ರಭುವೆ, be once a woman lord, and it is the final and ending part wherein a woman, she addresses the Lord. ಎಲ್ಲ ಮನಗಳ ಬಾಗಿಲು ಮುಚ್ಚಿ ಹೋಯಿತು. ರಾತ್ರಿಯ ನೀರವತೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚುತ್ತಿತ್ತು. ನನ್ನ ಅಸಹಾಯಕತೆ ನೋಡಿ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಕೂಡ ಅಮ್ಮ ಹಸಿವು ಅನ್ನಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಕಾಲು ಜೋಮು ಹಿಡಿದಂತಾಗಿ ಜಗುಲಿಯ ಮೇಲೆ ಕೈ ಚಾಚಿದೆ. ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಬ್ಬರೂ ನನಗೆ ಅಂಟಿಕೊಂಡೇ ಬಿದ್ದುಕೊಂಡವು. ಹಾಗೆಯೇ ಮಂಪರು ಎಚ್ಚರ. ವೇಳೆಯಷ್ಟೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಒಡಲು ಬೆಂದು ಹೋಗುವಂತಹ ಚೀತ್ಕಾರವೊಂದು ಅಪ್ಪಳಿಸಿ ಕಣ್ತೆರೆದಾಗ ಮಗ ಪಕ್ಕದಿಂದ ಜಾರಿ ಚರಂಡಿಯೊಳಗೆ ಬಿದ್ದಿದ್ದ. ಒಂದೇ ನೆಗೆತಕ್ಕೆ ಹಾರಿ ಕೊಚ್ಚೆ ತುಂಬಿದ ಮಗುವನ್ನು ಎದೆಗೆ ಅಪ್ಪಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೆ. ಆಗಲೇ ಚಪ್ಪರದಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಟೆಂಪೋ ನಿಂತ ಸದ್ದು, ಜನರ ಗಲಾಟೆ, ಸಂಭ್ರಮ, ಸಡಗರ. ಅವನು ಕೆಳಕ್ಕಿಳಿದ. ಟೆಂಪೋದ ಹಿಂದಿನ ಬಾಗಿಲಿನಿಂದ ಕೆಂಪು ವಸ್ತ್ರ ಸುತ್ತಿದ ಹೆಣ್ಣೊಬ್ಬಳನ್ನು ಬಲವಾದ ತನ್ನೆರಡು ಕೈಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಎತ್ತಿಕೊಂಡು ಕಿಂಕಾಪಿನ ವಸ್ತ್ರದಲ್ಲಿ ಸುತ್ತಿದ ಅಮೂಲ್ಯವಾದ ನಗದಂತೆ ದೃಢವಾದ ಹೆಜ್ಜೆಗಳನ್ನಡುತ್ತಾ ಅವನು ಮುಂದುವರೆದ. ಮನೆಯ ಬಾಗಿಲು ತೆರೆಯಿತು. ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಅವನೊಡನಿದ್ದರು. ನನ್ನ ಮಗ ನಡುಗುತ್ತಾ ನನ್ನನ್ನು ತಪ್ಪಿಕೊಂಡ. ನಾನು ಬಿಟ್ಟ ಕಣ್ಣು ನೆಟ್ಟ ನೋಟದಿಂದ ಅದೆಲ್ಲವನ್ನು ನೋಡುತ್ತಿದ್ದೆ. ಕೆಂಪು ಶಾಯಿ ತುಂಬಿದ ಹೃದಯದ ಮೊನೆ ತುಂಡಾಗಿದೆ. ಹೇಳಲು ಬಾಯಿಲ್ಲ, ಬರೆಯಲು ಅಕ್ಷರಗಳಿಲ್ಲ. ಸಹನೆ ಎಂಬುದರ ಅರ್ಥ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ನೀನು ಇನ್ನೊಮ್ಮೆ ಪ್ರಪಂಚ ನಿರ್ಮಿಸುವುದಾದಲ್ಲಿ, ಗಂಡು ಹೆಣ್ಣನ್ನು ಸೃಷ್ಟಿಸುವುದಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಅನುಭವವಿಲ್ಲದ ಕುಂಬಾರದಂತಾಗಬೇಡ. ಬಾ ಭೂಮಿಗೆ ಒಮ್ಮೆ ಹೆಣ್ಣಾಗು ಪ್ರಭುವೆ.
The door to hearts and houses had shut. The darkness was deepening. Seeing my helplessness, the children didn't mention their hunger. Since my feet were stiff, I spread out my legs. The children stuck to me and laid down. I was half asleep. I didn't know what time it was. When a scream loud enough to burn my heart opened my eyes, I saw that my son, who was sleeping next to me, had fallen into the ditch. In one leap, I jumped down and hugged his slush-covered body. That was when I heard a tempo stopping under the canopy. The noise of people, excitement, the bustle of celebration. He got down. From the back door of the tempo, with his two strong hands, he lifted a woman wearing red clothes, like a precious jewel, wrapped in gold-embroidered cloth. He walked ahead, taking purposeful steps. The front door of the house opened. Everyone was with him. My son shivered and hugged me. I looked at it all with wide eyes. The nib of my red ink-filled heart had broken. My mouth can speak no more. No more letters to write. I do not know the meaning of patience. If you were to build the world again, to create males and females again, do not be like an inexperienced potter. Come to earth as a woman, Prabhu. Be a woman once, O Lord.
Heartlamp winning the International Booker this year is a historic moment on multiple fronts. It's the first short story collection to win the prize. It's the second win for India, but the first in Kannada. And Deepa, you're the first Indian translator to win the prize. So this is history in the making, and I screamed when I found out, honestly. So I think that must feel surreal. but I want to know, how is the reception felt for both of you, both in India and abroad?
From February, when it was long listed, continuously I am attending per day about 4 to 5 interviews each and every day from February till today. See, it's not an ordinary thing. But when we returned to our native place, the people were, they were fighting among themselves to felicitate the win. And our state government, it also woke up at proper time, and they arranged a huge felicitation at airport itself. And there were a lot of class 1 officers and even the Kannada and Cultural Minister, and there were all folk artists who were full of that area, and there was a massive reception there. And further, the government itself, it arranged a huge function also at Vidhana Soda. It is like the head of the power at Bangalore, and the government has invited 1,000 artists and literary persons all over the state to attend that function. And they announced prize money also to both of us, and it was a very grand reception. And even till today, there are a lot of invitations pending, and we have to attend to it. There are a lot of invitations in international level also, from Ubud, Bali, New York, and Ceylon, from every places. And there is one team working on it, and it is sorting out all our visitings and other celebrations that are going to happen abroad.
I mean, it is obviously fabulous to be recognized by the government level, or some cultural institution or whatever. But I think somewhere there is this understanding also among general readers that this is a big deal for literature itself from the subcontinent. I think that is what I'm most excited about. So yes, I keep saying this, personally it's a fabulous achievement, and I'm just starting out and all of that. But all that aside, I think at a larger level, the fact that there is suddenly all this attention, and then the attention to the kind of English that is in this book versus being an English which is popular in translation elsewhere, I think that is what excites me the most. Because yes, the media storm is going to die down hopefully sometime soon and we can go back to our lives. But once that is there, I just hope to keep this kind of conversation going in rooms like this, and in what I translate next, or in what we all translate and read next as well. The kind of Englishes that are changing, and the kind of Englishes that we use back home. So I think that is something that I'm very excited about, and there is a lot of talk about the book on these terms as well, on the translation, and on why this is important, for why this is not just a cultural moment but also something like a new direction for literature as well. So I think that's something I've been very excited about back home.
Likewise, thank you for sharing that. I know the stories in Heartlamp, they span from over 30 years of your life. And during this time, you've been an activist and a lawyer. So I'm curious, what initially drew you to writing fiction, and especially the short story form?
I have written novels, poem collection is also published, a poetry collection, and I have done translations from Urdu to Kannada also, and I have translated even law books. There are so many publications of mine, and there are about 6 short stories collections which have been published over these years, and there are about 60 plus stories which have been published. And among those stories, Deepa selected 12 stories, and it has come out in Heartlamp. I am fond of short story format because the canvas is very small. It's not a big canvas. Canvas is small. Being an activist and a lawyer, I have got lot of deviations also. I cannot concentrate only on creative writing, and I need to attend some other priorities also. But that's why I found it very easy for me to concentrate on short stories. If I concentrate on a short story, I can do it within 1 week or 15 days or say about 1 month. Whereas a novel requires lot of time, which is not with me. So that's why I started a short story. It gives me a lot of satisfaction because lot of creativity is needed to fill up the gaps, to create a story, to create characters, to create a plot, to go to climax, anticlimax, and to the end. It requires lot of creativity to sum up in a small space. That satisfaction I get from this writing of short stories. That's why I prefer this format.
You mentioned that Deepa you selected these stories and curated them, so almost acting in an editorial capacity. So what was your point of entry into Banu's work, and how did that evolve into you deciding to put together this collection and make it book length?
So whenever I pick up a translation project that I'm potentially interested in, I try and read as much of the author's other works as possible. So it just kind of helps me understand how they think and how they process language and how they like to talk about different things. So I did read all of the stories that were then in publication. And for me, it was interesting because obviously when any writer that writes over a long period of time ends up even if the treatment is different, I think there is a repetition of themes naturally. It happens with everyone. So I didn't want to choose too many stories which would, be repetitive in terms of themes or in the way they were looking at how women characters are shaped and formed and how they deal with various life situations. So a lot of thought did go into making this final selection. First and foremost, these were stories that I personally enjoyed the most. That apart, there were also considerations of how language was being played out in each of these stories. And if you notice, each of the women characters, they are either young girls or they're new mothers or they're new wives or older women, or so that it follows sort of like the life cycle of a woman in all the roles that she plays. So even though at the heart of each of these stories there is the idea of women in their various roles, trying to live their best lives under patriarchy or under religious oppression, they are treated in very different ways. So this was something I was very mindful about. I didn't want to translate 3 stories which were talking about the oppressed wife. Because yes, each story is of course important, but then it didn't give a sense of the various ways in which these women were being treated in these stories. So I think those were the 2 main considerations that went into making these choices. And also the earlier stories from the first collection and the last 2 stories are from the 6th collection. So it's also a career spanning survey of these works.
I like that you survey or a retrospective.
Sort of,
almost.
yeah.
I would love to know how the translation process happened. Was it very back and forth between you two, or were there moments of friction or uncertainty? How was that process like?
So I'm not, I say this often, I'm not a full-time translator. That's not the entirety of my writing practice. I do my own work most of the time, which is why I think start to finish this took about 3 years. But that is not to say I was translating these stories for 3 years. So I think I would probably do a week of translation, very intense translation, and then keep it aside for a month or 2 and then go back to it and so on and so forth. I was very grateful that it was a very hard, hands-off kind of translation. So of course I was speaking with Banu whenever I had some clarifications, when I wanted more of a backstory or when I needed some clarification on the languages that she were, that she used and so on. But otherwise, there was not. It was not that I would translate a sentence and then show it to her. And
No,
then,
of course.
not that way at all.
Yeah.
So I think I greatly appreciated the trust that we had about treating these works, and I think final form is it's come out well.
So I really wanted to mention your translator's note, which is a small note that Deepa has written at the end of the collection. It's called Against Italics, which I find just a fabulous title. You sort of explain some of the choices that you've made during the translation process to retain a specific texture and rhythm that you said sort of acknowledges multiple iterations of different languages, from different kinds of Kannada itself to different Englishes, Urdu, Malayalam, Arabic. And I think any reader of the collection can distinctly feel those decisions. But what made me curious in particular was the collection has many moments of heightened lyricism, almost to me that feels like the text is nearly tipping into poetry. There's certain moments like this, and I actually want to read a line that I found just absolutely stunning, and this is from the story Black Cobras. After laying the egg of light at dawn, the black hen of ignorance exited, rushing into the darkness to peck at grains and sticks. So I'm reading this and I'm thinking, how do you translate that? What the imagery in the original Kannada, and we all know that in each language, imagery and cultural resonances feel and evoke different things. How does that work? Like, how is the process or the challenge of translating these moments of heightened lyricism? How do you approach that?
That's my favorite line because I hated translating that line. It was really tough because also I think it's not an image that is very common in Indian, I won't say Indian literature, in Kannada literature. It's not one of the familiar idioms or phrases, and so even to visualize that, what this meant took me a while to imagine this chicken and this and then this hen and all of that. So I think it is just honestly I see translating as much a creative process as writing itself, so which is why I prefer the term writer translator instead of just just translator. So I think it's just to have a ear for language, because at least that's how I saw it, this playing with two languages in this case, with Kannada and with English. So yes, these kind of things sort of throw you off because it took me a longer time than some of the other sentences. But yeah, I don't really know how else to say it, but to think of it also as a creative process where you're imagining this image, this picture, that word picture that you have, and then translating it into a language and trying to make it sound as poetic or as lyrical as possible.
Yeah,
So
thank you for sharing that. I was utterly stupefied. I was like, how do you come up with that? I really, of course, I wanted to ask in the moment that we're in right now in India, with the Hindu majoritarianism ideologies, where marginalized voices are really struggling to be heard, and especially Muslim voices and stories. And it's wonderful that this prize amplifies that. And I know that so much of your work as a lawyer and an activist, so much of what you may witness in that work likely filters into your stories. So do you think that winning this, do you hope, or what are the possibilities that you want to see for other Muslim writers in India, both in Indian publishing and internationally? Do you hope that there's more growth, that people read more Muslim stories in India?
Yes, of course. They are reading. Because of late, say about 1 year back, there was a protest program was arranged. There is one important organization that is backed by government called Kannada Sahitya Parishad. And that in that Kannada Sahitya Parishad, there will be a huge annual function that will be All India Kannada Sahitya Parishad program, in which the office bearers of that organization, they selected only Hindu authors to present their papers and to participate in that function. To protest that attitude of Kannada Sahitya Parishad, there was another same type of program was arranged by secularists there, which is called as Jana Sahitya Samavesha. People's Literature program, it was arranged. At that time, there was statistics, and people called for the statistics, and there it has been recorded at least a Muslim writer who has published at least one book, he or she has to register in that for that program. And you will be astonished to know, last year there are about 600 Muslim Kannada writers who have published at least one book. More than it, they have published more books. At least one book published, Muslim writers are about 600. And we arranged an alternate program of Akhila Bharata Sahitya Sammelana, same like that, and it was a great success also. And what you are asking is, there are more and more Kannada writers. Muslims are writing more and more in Kannada, and they are writing in Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, everywhere. Muslims are writing in the vernacular languages, and then only a writer can write when his work is being read by a lot of readers. It is happening. And you know, as Deepa told, there are, when I started writing, I write from the Muslim environment, and straight away I use words, Arabic, Dakni Urdu, words which are prevalent in Muslim families. I say kafan to the shroud, and I say janaza for the coffin, and I say namaz, I say asar, and I write it. And all these words now, they have been accepted as Kannada words, and all the writers use these words. And there is acceptance from the general public in Kannada, and even from Hindu writers and other writers. All these words and works have been accepted. That acceptance is more important at this juncture, as you told.
It's so wonderful that when such a big translation happens, the sheer number of people you can reach with these stories just multiplies. And I personally would, of course, love to see translated literature get championed more internationally. But what are sort of the possibilities you're envisioning? How do you sort of perceive the future after this win as a translator?
Honestly, I do want to be very, very hopeful and hope that everything changes and we have utopias all of a sudden. Don't we all? But honestly, I think it needs a lot more translators fighting to write in different Englishes. Because, and this is something that I've been sort of now that the initial rush is kind of over, I've heard of, I won't say resistance, but then sort of opinions rather from senior translators about, it's okay, I mean this translation won a prize, good for you, good for us, good for India, all of that, but we are happy to continue to do what we were doing for the last 30 years or 40 years or longer. So I think my hope lies in slightly translators younger than me, probably those who are just starting out in their 20s, in their early 30s, who have a more naturalized relationship with English, because I think translators who are right now in their 60s and 70s and 80s, they have a very different relationship with English back home than my generation. I'm in my 40s, so than what we have, and then the generation after me has a very, very different relationship with English. So I think the hope will, I mean, real change, real solid change probably will come from not my generation, but from the generation after me. So I think that's what I'm kind of really keeping my fingers crossed for. Because obviously if someone's been translating for the last 30-40 years, they're not going to magically change and bring in these various textures in English, because it's too much of a change, and I totally understand that. So I think rooting for the youth to bring change.
All the youth here,
All the, yes.
Thank you so much for sharing both of your perspectives. I want to open it up to the audience for questions. Yes?
Can I ask, Banu, did you have any influences, either in English, like Urdu poetry or anything like that? What were your influences, or what are your, that gave you that creative spur to write?
So she's asking you read and admire.
What kind of things have you read over the years?
First, there are a lot of writers. I cannot say 1 or 10 or 100. I have read so many writers, but I have read Russian literature, English literature, and Bengali literature. I am very much impressed by this literature. Of course, Kannada literature. And one thing I want to tell is, I am not a student of literature. I am a science student. But more than any book, I have been influenced with the social movements back home, which started during 1980. During 1980, there were a lot of social movements at Karnataka and at my place, wherein there was farmers movement, Dalit movement, feminist movement, Kannada language movement, environment movement, and all these movements, social movements, they aimed together to change the perception of the society, and all of them, they demanded equality as their slogan. And I extensively and physically participated in those movements, and I gained a lot of experiences through them. The interaction of the people and the interaction of the rigidity of the society and the stereotypes they have been imposed upon the people, and particularly on women. And my technique was to trash these images, to destroy and demolish these images that were aimed at women, and I have tried throughout my level in my life and in my works to demolish these stereotypes.
When you were growing up, how did your parents and your siblings view your activism? When did you start it?
Yeah, I started from my childhood itself. I defied the imposition of any rules on me. I never appreciated it. Even my parents could not impose any rules upon me, but they respected. They allowed me to grow up as an independent person. And I am the eldest daughter of a family of 8. I have got 2 brothers and we are 6 sisters. And all of them, they followed my footprints. They are me. And my parents also supported me a lot. And my husband is also respects my views, my work, and my commitment. And he also helps me a lot in this direction. And I was thereby I got all my family, but I got very highly tested times. I was challenged, and you know, my autobiography is coming up. One fanatic, he came up with a long knife and he wanted to assault me also. And there are a lot of such, dramatic things which has happened to me, and somehow I have been saved. But throughout, my family stood by my side. I will tell you one incident, small, but it is a joke. You may consider as a joke. There was a fatwa cast upon me, and they said you are not a Muslim, and we don't accept that you are a Muslim, and you cannot be buried in our graveyard, all those things. And at that time, my daughter Lubna, she was going in the road, and a boy called her, see, the daughter of a mad woman is going there. He called her, he wanted to insult her, and she said, oh yes, she's mad, she's not sane. How do you know about it? She asked. And he was embarrassed because she replied, no. Then she said, all creative persons are semi-lunatics. That way she is not a perfect ordinary woman. She might be lunatic, but it is special lunatism, you should do it. She answered him and came. That way even my children faced it. But they are with me, they were with me, and they are with me.
What's your sense of younger people engaging with their vernaculars? So kind of speaking more, reading more, watching more content in their mother tongues or in kind of, in the vernacular regional languages. Are you optimistic about it? Do you see more and more of that happening?
Yes, certainly. I think all of us have this very skewed view that cities are perfect representations of the rest of the state. So Bangalore is not Karnataka, Mumbai is not Maharashtra, and so on. So if you just look at Bangalore in my case and say this is oh, Kannada is nowhere to be heard, and you grew up in Bangalore, so you know how it is. You never learnt Kannada, but because you didn't need to, and that's the nature of cities in I would say most of India. But they are not representatives, a perfect representation of what the rest of the state is thinking. In fact, I think some of the most exciting Kannada content is coming from northern parts of Karnataka, much more than south. I live in the southern Mysore, and I live in Coorg. So I'm very optimistic because there are a lot of even if you just look online, a lot of reels, a lot of posts and jokes and comedians and whatever. I mean, the way they're using language, especially up in northern Karnataka, it's absolutely fantastic. I don't speak that dialect of Kannada at all, but yes, I'm very optimistic. I think it's just that we need to train ourselves to look outside of cities. Because we just kind of, it's just convenient to look at cities and say, okay, this is what Karnataka is, this is what Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu or whatever is. So yes, I'm very optimistic about what's happening and even in terms of literature, some of the most exciting literature is not from the cities at all, from writers living in cities, but from smaller towns, both of us live in smaller towns. So the way language plays out in these smaller, semi-urban, rural areas, I think is absolutely fascinating.
You had your hand up.
I wanted to ask you, when I was reading the book, there's a lot of nuances of languages which is captured. I can evidently see that you love languages, but there is no glossary in that. I don't need a glossary, but did you have to fight for that? Was it like a intentional choice, and did you have to really fight for that? No, I'm not going to have a glossary on this, and I'm not going to translate what individual words mean.
No, I didn't have to fight for it because I think it's also to do with my incredible editor, Tara Tobler from And Other Stories. My publisher, Stephen, is here, and they were, I think, huge credit to them for being open-minded, because I have faced a lot of resistance to these kind of translations back home I think it's just because it's not been done before at this scale. So there has always been a sense that, okay, this is not how you do it, or this is not English, or this is not proper English, whatever proper English is. So no, I think it, you know, for a work to be interesting and to kind of push boundaries, it also needs a team of people who believe in it. It's not just me saying, okay, this is how I want to do it. You have to have a publisher, you have to have an editor, and thereafter readers who are willing to make the effort. And I think there is also this idea that reading translated literature has to be easy somehow, and I don't see why that should be the case. It's not a beach read. It's not chick lit. It's not something that you mindlessly read and keep. No shade. I don't want to get into trouble. Chick lit, or I read a lot of them. But you know, reading has to be a challenge. It has to push you to think about language. It has to push you to think about cultures, and I think there has to be this idea has to be normalized that reading can be a challenge and also a pleasure. That it's not work. You're not working when you're reading something unfamiliar. So I was very clear that I didn't want to add a glossary, and I think it's, as a translator, you do, if you can do a good job at not having to include a glossary, then you know your work is done. A good translator does not need a glossary, is what I was trying to say.
So you mentioned the act of translation being a creative act, and I was just wondering, in terms of understanding the cultural context in which the stories were written, I think in an interview you mentioned that you watched some Pakistani dramas. So I was just curious in terms of what you were reading and watching to familiarize yourself, other than the linguistic context, with the cultural one.
Right. So I don't come from the same community as Banu. So, and that is, I think, the first thing that I was very aware of, because especially given where we are as a country back home, I didn't want to stereotype things. I didn't want to stereotype a community and just reduce them to these caricaturized characters. So I wanted to get into the culture as much as I could, being an outsider. So I did a lot of reading around the text, a lot of Pakistani Urdu dramas, which are so addictive. So addictive. I'll give you a whole list because I spent months watching TV and calling it research to myself. But because somewhere, I mean, these are beautifully produced dramas. If anyone watches. I mean, don't start watching if you don't have the time. They're very addictive. And I was listening to a lot of music, old favorites like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan or Aruj Aftab or Ali Sethi, because somehow being consuming that kind of culture, somehow being immersed in that sort of environment was helping me a lot when it came to understanding some of the nuances. And I was reading a lot of other translations from Urdu and from Arabic. I read a lot of Arabic literature in translation just because I like them. So somewhere it helped. I think Daisy Rockwell calls it invisible force fields, where when you're translating from whatever language to whatever other language, there are a lot of other things that come into play. There is culture, there is history, there's economy, there's socio-political nuances. So she beautifully sums it up, saying these are invisible force fields that you need to be mindful of as a translator. So I think watching these things somewhere helped. And, yeah.
Can I make if there's nobody else?
Yeah, we can go ahead.
Okay, so I'm from Pakistan, and you may say that the stories are from Kannada, in Kannada, but these are entirely universal themes for South Asian women, at least. There's religious hypocrisy and the patriarchy. And I think what comes across in your writing is the sharp eye you have for observing human nature,
Yes.
which is what we are reading in these
Yes,
stories,
yes.
which I think is amazing.
Yeah. First, I never had any, footsteps to follow when I started writing, because it is all Kannada writing, and Kannada people used to write. No, very few Muslim authors used to write Kannada, and when I started, I don't wanted to write in the same style as some of them wrote. I wanted to have a different style. So I started probing. It is experimental. What to write, what names should I give, and what background I should there should be some background, and what character should I describe, and shall I write about Ramzan festival or Deepavali festival? Am I competent to picturize Deepavali festival as I write about Ramzan festival? And what are the issues I should take up? All these things, they were a huge question mark before me. And one by one, I started experimenting. That is how those stories came up. And as I have told, though I have written about Muslim women, because I wanted to expose my culture, Muslim culture, and I want to discuss issues of Muslims. But those issues, those struggles, that human nature, it applies not only to Muslims, it applies to Hindus also, Christians also, it applies to Karnataka also, it applies to England also, it applies to Turkey also, and it has got an universality in it.
Yeah.
That's how most of the women and most of the literary critics, they are identifying those characters and those issues. They are searching like that. And that nature of universality should remain in literature.
Absolutely.
It applies to all humankind.
Exactly.
Any final questions? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, congrats to both of you. This one's for you. How do you choose to, which books to translate? And have you considered maybe, or not considered, but what do you think about the state of translations back into vernaculars in India, in other languages? What, are they gaining prominence?
I think there's a huge tradition of books being translated into, in my case, Kannada or the other regional languages in India. I don't do it myself, so I can't really talk about how effective they are or how popular they are. But I think we need more. From what I see, I can only speak for Kannada here. For example, in Malayalam, there is this publisher called DC Books, which does extraordinary work when it comes to translating back into Malayalam. So the moment a major prize is announced, for example, they would immediately buy the rights and they start translating and so on. They're very conscious of translating contemporary work. I don't think something of that scale happens in Kannada, at least not yet. I hope it does. Because what happens is, one is, yes, someone is translating from Kannada to English, but unless there is a reverse thing, these two languages don't come into conversation with each other. So there's no conversation happening between English and English, Kannada, English, or Kannada, English, Kannada, And I've always believed that language is a very living thing. It's a living, breathing entity. It grows, it kind of loses its power at times, and then it becomes stronger, and so on and so forth. So unless it is constantly in conversation with various other languages, and not just English, I'm not saying just because it's translated into English, it's some major thing. So I think there has to be a lot more between languages as well, between Kannada and Tamil, or Kannada and Malayalam, or Kannada or Bengali, and So I think that needs to be a lot more, and a lot more contemporary. I think a lot of classics get translated, if I'm not wrong, but not much of contemporary literary fiction.
So much. Banu and Deepa, for your time and your generosity in sharing your thoughts with us. I can't imagine how many times you've had to do a version of the same interview. I hope this was a little bit more fun.
Yes.
So if you haven't got a copy of Heart Lamp yet, they are on sale and you can get them signed tonight. So please do, and have a great evening. Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.